This is TJ Legacy, host of the Soapboxx Podcast. The live stream will start shortly, but make sure you like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and tell all of your friends and family that the most infamous podcast on all your streaming services is about to go live.
TJ, what's goody? It's HB. Can I just big you up real quick with what you're doing with the Soapboxx? Listen, anytime somebody takes their platform to educate and inform the culture of hip-hop with politics, pop culture, doing what you're doing and being responsible with your platform, I can't do nothing but salute you, TJ. Keep doing what it do. Keep repping for the culture. Nothing but love and respect from me, baby. Peace.
Gentlemen, what's really good? It's Peter Rosenberg, Hot 97, ESPN, WWE, Cheap Heat Podcast, all that. Big shout out to my peoples over at the Soapboxx, all right? My man TJ, Legacy Cole, the whole Soapboxx crew. Incredible new podcast, all right? Politics, pop culture, hip-hop, even wrestling on occasion. It's all there. So go subscribe and make sure you tune in to the Soapboxx. TJ, what up, man? Appreciate you.
Peace to the planet. Charlemagne the God here. What's happening, TJ Legacy Cole? Salute to you, King. Salute to the Soapboxx Podcast. The Soapboxx Podcast is an independent black media podcast, and they talk hip-hop, politics, pop culture, mental health, social justice, a lot of my favorite subjects. Check them out, man. Tune in, subscribe to them. You never know. I'm out here looking at all the different podcasts that are moving and shaking out here, because, I got the Black Effect Podcast Network, so I'm going to be checking y'all out, TJ. All right? Keep working.
Strike and 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 strike until you have victory. For every enemy that is aligned against you, let there be that we would strike the ground, for you will give us victory, God. I hear a sound of abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of shouting and singing. I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of an abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. I hear a sound of an abundance of rain. I hear a sound of victory. The Lord says it is done. Done. It is done. The Lord says 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 it is victory, 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 victory. I hear the sound of victory. I hear the sound of victory. Victory, 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 victory. I hear the sound of victory. I hear the sound of victory. It is done. 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 The Lord says 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 it is done.
Hey, welcome to the Soapboxx Podcast. I'm your host, TJ Legacy, and I am joined with a special panelist. Let me pull everybody up right here. My special panel. But let me introduce my brother all the way from NYC. We have my man, Alan York. What's good, Alan? How you doing? How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm perturbed. I'm perplexed. And I'm all of those adjectives, just like the rest of the world is, man. How you feeling?
Oh, man, I'm feeling good, actually. I'm glad. I mean, we are now, we have a president, and then we potentially have a president-elect coming on, and then we got somebody who needs an eviction notice, but he don't want to leave, so we don't know what's going on in the White House. But, yes, so look, he's going through some hard times, and we got his press conference that we're talking about President Donald Trump and the elections. Of course, we just played the video from his senior evangelist advisor, Paula White, just calling on the African ancestry gods to come and guide Trump to another victory. So, which is funny in itself. But let me go ahead and introduce our illustrious panel. I'm going to start with from Florida, District 47. We have Representative Anna Eskamani. Representative Anna Eskamani, welcome to the Soapboxx.
Thank you so much, TJ and Alan. It's great to be here.
Yes. And we also have Tampa, Central Florida. We'll just say Florida, political consultant, organizer extraordinaire, Donna Davis. How you doing, Donna?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
All right. And then we have my brother all the way from the 305, from the new Florida majority, Senator Dwight Bullard.
Hey, don't put that on the African ancestors, by the way.
Yo, she was calling, but they was like, nah, we good, fam.
Yeah.
We're not listening. And then I got my brother in the movement. What's going on? Activist Anthony Rogers Wright. What's going on, my man? How you doing? How you feeling?
So honored to be here with these two incredible sisters, my brother and teacher Dwight Bullard, and the rest of y'all, even the Orioles and a Red Sox fan. So you know, it's about to be lit.
That's what's up. And for those who are in Central Florida, Orange County, we have the reform sheriff himself, the attorney at law extraordinaire, Andrew Darling of Andrew Darling, attorney at law, here joining us today to give us some legal perspective. Appreciate you being here, Andrew.
Hey, TJ, thanks for having me, TJ and Alan. I appreciate it. We're going to have to start talking about this normal appearance stuff. This is kind of fun, man. I like the soapbox.
That's what's up, man. I appreciate it. I'd like everybody to feel welcome. And last but not least, we have a regular. Speaking of our regulars, we have a regular Christian Lloyd Suarez. Christian, please, I want to make sure I get your introduction right. Please let them know real quick off the bat what you're working on currently.
Yeah, People Over Politics is the political action committee that we just started, me and Jeremy Fitzer. Obviously, Political Sauce is an ongoing project that we've had for a while. And, I work with the Puerto Rican Parade, but mostly looking for work.
That's what we're going to need you. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that a little later on. But before we jump into anything, I do want to play a clip. President Donald Trump just had, before we came on air, President Donald Trump had a press conference, and everybody was wondering what he was going to say about the election. And so I have a small clip of what he was talking about at the press conference regarding the elections and the vote count. And then I want to get everyone's perspective, starting with Representative Ana Escamani. Let's listen to President Donald Trump.
Clarify that they only want legal votes, because they talk about votes, and I think they should use the word legal votes. We want every legal vote counted, and I want every legal vote counted. We want openness and transparency, no secret count rooms, no mystery ballots, no illegal votes being cast after Election Day. You have Election Day, and the laws are very strong on that. You have an Election Day, and they don't want votes cast after Election Day, and they want the process to be an honest one. It's so important. We want an honest election, and we want an honest count, and we want honest people working back there, because it's a very important job. So that's the way this country is going to win. That's the way the United States will win, and we think we will win the election very easily. We think there's going to be a lot of litigation because we have so much evidence, so much proof, and it's going to end up perhaps at the highest court in the land. We'll see. But we think there'll be a lot of litigation because we can't have an election stolen like this. And I tell you, I have been talking about this for many months with all of you, and I've said very strongly that mail-in ballots are going to end up being a disaster. Small elections were a disaster. Small, very easy to handle elections were disastrous. This is a large-scale version, and it's getting worse and worse every day. We're hearing stories that are horror stories, absolute horror stories. And we can't let that happen to the United States of America. It's not a question of who wins, Republican, Democrat, Joe, myself. We can't let that happen to our country. We can't be disgraced by having something like this happen. So it will be hopefully cleared up, maybe soon, I hope soon, but it'll probably go through a process, a legal process. And as you know, I've claimed certain states, and he's claiming states, and we can both claim the states, but ultimately I have a feeling judges are going to have to rule. But there's been a lot of shenanigans, and we can't stand for that in our country. Thank you very much.
All right. So you heard President Donald Trump talking about there's been a lot of shenanigans going on in this country. I want to first turn to Representative Ana Escamani. First, I want to say thank you. Not thank you. Yes, thank you for your service, but I want to say congratulations on your reelection. Congratulations on being reelected. My first question is, how dangerous is is it for the president of the United States to tell the American people that potentially there was voter fraud and that the system on which our democracy stands is corrupt?
Incredibly dangerous. I mean, I'm seeing some head nods in the room. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And part of what makes our democracy so powerful is that every vote counts and that there's a smooth transition into a next administration. And yet right now the president is intentionally creating tension among the American people. We saw armed protesters at a Pennsylvania vote count location. And, again, for me, it's like, okay, well, why aren't the police stopping that from happening? Because if there's Black Lives Matter protests, it's stopped immediately when it becomes, any degree of concern for law enforcement. And it was a concern because law enforcement had to escort people out of the building. And so we already see the president's supporters, creating a lot of drama and fulfilling his basically lies about this election process. And at the same time, we know that it's critically important that if there is fraud, we look at it, but there is no evidence. There's literally no evidence. And when he was giving this press conference, he was actually interrupted by NPR to do a fact check because his comments were riddled with lies. And even one of our local Republicans, Representative Renee Placencia, posted on his Facebook page about it being problematic. So this is not a red versus blue issue right now. Like, you have Republicans who are saying this ain't right.
No, I definitely, I get that. But at this point, he keeps referencing going to the Supreme Court, which makes me think, and I'll pose this to everybody, which makes me think this was the plan all along. Like, he knew that, hey, there's a chance that I'm not going to win this thing. I've done so much crap put it over the past 4 years. We're going to win this election. So let me go ahead and let me hedge my bet and say, well, there's going to be fraud, knowing that mostly the Democrats were pushing vote by mail. Could this be, am I putting the tinfoil cap on? Could this be, could this be his plan all along? What do you think?
I'm with you. I mean, the president has been planting the seeds to exploit this election to benefit him. So all the rumors he created about vote by mail, which led to Republicans who are traditionally very, very well known to participate in vote by mail to vote on election day. And of course, Democrats overwhelmingly participating, and those who are full of COVID-19, many of our seniors, participating in vote by mail or early vote. And so, yeah, this is absolutely part of a plan to eliminate vote by mail ballots in some degree, as we're seeing attempts in Pennsylvania, to try to secure a victory through cheating and through lying, which is unfortunately what our president is pretty good at.
Yeah. So another, I saw, right now, Georgia, we're waiting on Pennsylvania, Georgia, we're waiting on Nevada, and we're also waiting on Alaska. I don't know why Alaska is taking so long. There's 20 people up there. We're waiting on who else are we waiting on?
By dog sleds.
Yeah, like I don't get what's going on. What's wrong with Alaska and what they're doing?
I think we have
I saw that
too, right? Arizona.
I saw some, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I saw some news outlets, actually Fox News of all outlets, called Arizona already for Joe Biden. So right. Joe Biden really, he just needs Nevada, right? Am I correct?
Right. Nevada, yeah, or Pennsylvania too, I think, right? And then
will be a blowout. Yeah,
I don't think he needs it.
Yeah, so he just needs 6. I did want to talk to you, Representative Ana Escamani, for those who are watching us or listening to us on any of our streaming services or our platforms. You mentioned, I brought up Georgia, and then I'm going to go to Donna. I'm going to get your thoughts on this. You mentioned Georgia, and you gave credit off the bat to Stacey Abrams, who ran for who governor unsuccessfully, but she's actually came to Orlando. Right. She's been active. Can you talk about why you decided to give her a shout out and why you think she had such an impact on the state of Georgia, potentially flipping blue?
Absolutely. I mean, time and time again, we see the Democratic Party really tokenize and ignore people of color, especially women of color, in the work that they and I don't think there's any doubt about it that Black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party, and we need to trust Black women. We need to stand with Black women, and Georgia is literally a competitive state right now, and that's incredible. And it's in large part to the work of Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor, should be governor right now. The election was stolen from her. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And she got right back up and started organizing. She loves her state. She is building long-term collective power and really redefining what public service looks like. And she even came down to Florida, like you said, TJ, to help us organize and get out UCF students. And the UCF precinct saw over 100% turnout. And
yes, I did see that.
Yeah, so she deserves the kudos. And so much in politics, we don't give credit where credit is due. And I definitely wanted to make sure I played my part in being clear on who we can thank for Georgia being in play.
Absolutely. Donna, do you feel like Stacey Abrams, or really, and we'll talk about the Black community and their effect on the Democratic Party as a whole, but do you feel like she, at the end of the day, if Biden wins, that she will get the credit for flipping Georgia? What's in play for her? Is it a cabinet seat? What do you think that how she should be really appreciated, let's say, for lack of a better term?
Well, Stacey said when she was being vetted for VP that she was ready to serve. I mean, and I have no doubt in my mind that her capacities and aptitudes and her pulse is right on the finger of the people of the great state of Georgia. And I love what she's done, and I love what she's doing. But I want to say this. In a celebrity culture, there are so many people, and I posted this last night on my Facebook page, that it requires candidates and voters to stand online in the snow and in the sun, and it requires people in their community, large and small donors, and we tend to pick a person and then hang all of these laurels around their neck. And I think we should be careful because people have been agitating and putting in that work in the state of Georgia. I've lived in Georgia several different times over the last 20 years, and I have met so many people who have contributed and have had their hands on that plow and never thought it was a safe time to take them off. And so while I want to give Stacey her flowers for being bold and brilliant and Black and beautiful, I want to make sure that we don't put all of the flowers at her feet, because it really does take a village to turn a state blue.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I do, Representative Anna Eskamani, almost immediately after you got reelected, you switched. I feel like you shifted your focus to the entire Florida Democratic Party after you won your election, because Florida, let's just put it, it was a complete failure. It was a complete failure. We lost Florida. Florida is not blue. It's red. And only in, I would say urban areas, or really within inner city limits. We got, Jacksonville, Tampa, Miami. We'll get to that. Senator Dwight Bullard. We'll get to my what's going down there in Miami, and so in West Palm Beach. I say that the Florida Democratic Party needs a new head coach, a new GM. Trevor Lawrence, a new quarterback, linebackers, cornerbacks. They need a whole revamp of the system of how they do things in their outreach. What say you, Representative Oscar?
Absolutely. I mean, the first thing folks should know is that there are many layers to the Democratic Party. So we say Democratic Party kind of broadly, but for those that don't follow like the structure as much, there's the FDP, which is like the main, statewide party, and then you have House Victory and Senate Victory, which are the two arms that focus on the state legislative seats. And then you also have organizations that are called independent expenditures, which are outside groups that come in and they don't coordinate with campaigns. They spend money in their own ways. And then you have the DECs at a county by county level. You have different Democratic clubs and caucuses. So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but I definitely echo your points in that the folks that are calling the shots, including the Biden campaign, which does operate almost separately from the FDP. There is coordination. I mean, the executive director of FDP was also one of the advisors for the Biden campaign, so there's tons of overlap. they all failed miserably. And it was a combination of tokenization, of ignoring communities of color, and really making assumptions that if you're a certain color, a certain age, a certain gender, if you're LGBTQ+, then you're going to automatically vote Democrat and you don't really need our attention. And then also just complete lack of field, like no field operation. And of course, the pandemic made that challenging. But like Donna said, there are folks, even during this pandemic, who have been making phone calls, talking to their neighbors, finding ways to build collective power at a neighborhood level. And when I look at the work of our campaign, over 500 volunteers made 40,000 phone calls, and we touched 33,000 doors. And that on the ground field operation is so important to mobilizing folks who are unlikely to vote, or folks who don't know who you are and might be more vulnerable to attack ads that are misleading. And you didn't see, you saw the Republican Party do a lot of fields, but not Democrats. And I have no doubt that's one reason why the losses were so big. I mean, both Duval and Seminole went to Biden, and yet those state-led races were lost at local level.
Yeah. Well, I think it's more, and I'm talking about FDP and the leadership of the Florida Democratic Party, who, and I'll talk about, within the Black, I'm seeing the same faces from the Hillary campaign to Gillum to Biden. And if you look all in the South, for the exception of Georgia, it's red. Like, so something has got to change. And it's like the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. So what would your strategy be for, is it a complete progressive youth overhaul of the Florida Democratic Party? Is it a mixture? Is it a philosophy in grassroots? Because I honestly feel that there's such a disconnect from politicals and pundits for the Florida Democratic Party and the actual grassroots movement that are, like a Donna or Senator Dwight Bullard or a Christian or even an Anthony Rogers Wright. Like, there's a disconnect where it's like, or even myself, where we're shunned, right? And we get the late night. Well, I'll speak for we get the midnight hour calls, right?
Can I say something about that?
Go ahead, Donna.
I've been working in the field all over this country for the past 20 years. I'm a consultant at a DC firm. Nobody in Tampa ever asks me what I think about their field strategy. We pay all of this lip service to centering Black women and centering the strategy and the thinking of Black women. But I haven't been in a space yet where we're actually putting that into practice. I won't say practice because that's the word I'm looking for, right? It's where your theory meets what you actually do. And so in every space that I've been in, we say Black women and then we defer to POC. We say Black women and then we defer to Black men. Black men lost their minds during this election. There were a lot of Black men who just who walked the plank, in plain view of the public, from Kanye West on down to Ice Cube, right? And they need to be called into accountability. But back to field strategy. I stay on the independent expenditure side because, one, I'm old and I have to make money, right? And I join campaigns because they're uncontrolled chaos that don't pay well and really take a lot out of your soul. And I'm just way too old to be playing with 22-year-old kids named Connor. Just can't do it anymore, right? Done. So I stay on the IE side, and I am the cleanup woman that Betty Wright talked about. When the people in the campaigns mess up, they call me. When we almost didn't get our 0.5% transportation tax in Tampa, they called me. We came in and neatly and sweetly knocked on 56,000 doors in 23 days. That's what we do. I came to Orlando. We knocked on 100,000 doors in less than 20 days. So when the party can't get it done, we come in. When all of these big money PACs can't get it done, we show up and we take their money and we do it right. What I'd like to do is take that skill set and begin to train young people who want to be field experts and get them out there, teach them how to ramp up quickly, treat the canvassers like human beings, pay them properly. Money is there.
Right.
And have deep quality conversations on the doors, because that's how we swing elections. And everywhere that we did that successfully, those places turned blue. Now, the last thing I'll say is that we have to get into these communities, plant ourselves there, and do real work. There's a lot of money moving around in Florida, but I have a lot of questions about the quality of the work that's being done with said dollars. And so I know that what Senator Dwight is doing, I know that some of the work that For Our Future Florida has done, but I have so many questions when I see the work that when I go in the campaign offices and I see how people are treating people. When you are doing a field operation that has no data integrity systems attached to it, you really don't know if your data is real, right? You're doing this on phones that have no SIM cards, and I don't understand any of that. And these are simple things. These are not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, right? These are really simple things we can do to nail down the integrity of the data, to make sure that canvassers are being humanized. We can't run a Fight for 15 campaign while we chew up human beings in the service of that work. This is deep hypocrisy, high hypocrisy. So that's what I'd like to say. But you can't come out and just criticize people's work. You have to come in with your expertise and offer it in a way that people can accept it.
Right.
Absolutely. Senator Dwight Bullock, go ahead. In your expertise, how do we fix it? Or is it worth fixing? Do we need to have a big exodus and do something different?
Well, here's where I would offer up is I think that I'm the only person who's gone through the rigmarole of running for the chair of the party, right?
I was there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what I would say is the system is broken internally in how that process works.
Yes.
Anytime you're talking about, so folks understand the inner workings of the Florida Democratic Party in terms of how the chair, who basically has unilateral power along with the executive director on how money is allocated and spent, is going to all the counties, talking to two people who have voting power in those counties, and those two people ultimately giving their vote to who they view as the most competent or desirous nominee for chair of the party. When you have a situation like that where 99.9% of the Democrats, registered Democrats in the state, have no say-so in the process, where 99.9% of the Democrats who consider themselves membership in the FDP have no say-so in the process. That is a non-democratic, small d democratic process that has to be fixed internally. That being said, you gotta cut that bad boy down to the root at the end of the day. Like you gotta chop that tree down, pull up the stub, plant a new sapling, and grow something different. Because at the end of the day, well, here's the thing. Let's start first. The Florida Democratic Party fundamentally did not exist as a formal entity, decision-making entity, until, let's say, the 90s. And the reason I say that is because, like a lot of southern states, you had an antiquated, predominantly white male system of power broking that was done, right? Whether it was the pork chop gang or the various governors, whoever was the highest ranking Democratic official in the state was the black hand that determined where all the resources went. So when the Democrats lose power in the mid-90s, the Florida Democratic Party now has to formalize itself as an entity that hadn't operated the way the way people think Democratic parties are supposed to operate. So now you start electing chairs. Those chairs are then defaulting still to those same folks. So at the end of the day, Senator Bill Nelson was making most of the decisions for the state of Florida as the highest ranking official, right? Like when money would come down, they'd call him first. He would point to where the resources go, and that's how it went. It's maybe the last 10 years where you might have the party actually having some sense of influence. So you're talking about a system that doesn't know how to operate properly. And so when I say tear it down to the root, and plan something new, you actually have to put infrastructure in place, because now you have a consultant-driven entity that's not making good decisions with the resources that they get, because Florida will get millions of dollars as pass-through money, and they'll put it and spend it on the most frivolous and dumb things ever, right? And so what I'm saying for folks who are listening, right?
Yeah.
We have an opportunity. When I say we, progressive-minded folks have an opportunity to do this thing right. Because when you look at Georgia as an example, the chair of the Georgia Democratic Party just got elected to Congress.
Nikema,
Williams,
yes.
right?
And she used to work at Planned Parenthood, by the way.
Shout out to PP, right? But what I would say to that is, in order to get right like that, you have to actually build out infrastructure that, upholds and uplifts Black women, women of color, you name it. Because in this state, the dominant forces that are making the state move, if you look at the blue pockets around the state, are those folks. And I'm sure, Chris is going to talk about the Latinx thing in a little bit, but there's still a significant number of Latinx folks who are making this thing happen. At the end of the day, Joe Biden won 66% of Puerto Rican voters in the state of Florida. At the end of the day, Colombian voters, Brazilian voters, these are folks that have to be engaged, but we're not monolithic. Black people aren't monolithic. Latinx folks aren't monolithic. Any sort of affinity group is not monolithic. But people automatically make the assumption, well, we have to put these things out on here. No, we have to do a deep dive into community to make people believe that they have faith in an entity that exists. Because basically what happened over the last 2.5 years, is the Republican Party basically said, we're going to label every Democrat a communist and a socialist, and we're going to pump that message for 2 consecutive years to anybody that will listen. And what did the Democrats do in response? Nothing, right? Nothing over that same time period to basically say, if you like healthcare in places like Hialeah, which was the #1 city in the country with the Obamacare sign up, you should rock with the Democratic Party. No one said if you want to keep kids not getting shot in schools, rock with the Democrat. Like simple messages that if you have been saying them repeatedly over the last 2.5 years, you wouldn't have these problems. But anytime you basically allow somebody to run ramshot on you for 2.5, 3 years with a consistent message that you're not responding back to, or you feel nervous, you're like, oh, what do we say? Are we communist or are we socialist?
Yeah.
Listen, guess what, America? You've been living socialist principles since the American school system started, since fire departments started, since the U.S. Army began. Like all these are socialists.
How do we, I'll go around the horn with this. How do we? And I know I'm looking far ahead because we haven't even finished this election cycle yet. But how do we in Florida energize the base? I know we talked about getting more deep into changing the message, but who galvanizes? Like, how do we get into that type of energy? Because DeSantis, if these folks voted for Donald Trump, we got baby Trump over here, who's in the governor's mansion, who's basically going to double down on the things that you just said, and now you have Donald Trump talking about the election was stolen, it was stolen, it was stolen. So you already know that's going to be a message from the DeSantis camp that, oh, they're going to try to do the same thing that they did. They're going to turn Florida and try to sabotage. So how do we energize the base? I'm going to start with you, Representative Ana Escamani, because I know that your time is limited with us, and then we can go around the horn. And then I'm going to get with Alan, because I want to talk to him about hip hop's influence. Go ahead.
Absolutely. And I'll be super brief. And I just much love and solidarity to this conversation. I honestly wish I could spend more time, but I'm happy it's happening in such a public platform. But quick answer to your question is I just want to echo Donna's points about field. I mean, I do think we got to be in our communities and don't just show up on election day asking for a vote. Show up like Senator Bullitt said, show up all the time and ask not to vote for you, but ask, what can I do for you? What do you need right now? How can I serve you? And that's one of the best ways to to build transformational relationships versus transactional ones. I'll talk to y'all later. Be safe.
All right. Thank you, Representative. I'm gonna talk to let me say, I was gonna say Representative Darling, Attorney Andrew Darling, and then I'm gonna go to Alan. Then I'll go to activist Anthony Rogers Wright, and then Christian, you'll chime in. Go ahead, Attorney Darling.
Yeah, so I think to piggyback on what Senator Bullard said is the way that you build this power is with a different structure. When you look at the way that FDP and the DECs are set up, these DEC positions are not paid positions. That lends it to a very specific group and class of people who can volunteer to do the work. And the majority of those folks are as old as some of the older electorate. The number of folks who can take the time, like folks, I'm 35 years old. Folks that are my age, that are just coming into a position where this is the first year where I've made enough money to be like, okay, I can go out to eat nice at the end of a month. Like this is the first time. So I'm trying to, build something. So, and I know I'm in so much better of a position than a lot of folks. And you cannot center young people. You cannot center single mothers, single fathers. You can't center them in these jobs that have all these responsibility and then not pay them. And that's the issue. Why don't we have representation? Because folks got to work. And it's really that simple. And I mean, there's a lot of things that, we talked about that are incredibly problematic. I will say this. We went from losing by 32,463 votes 2 years ago at the top of our ticket to 374,509 votes. We went from less than 0.5% to almost 3.5%. That's a 6x percentage point difference. That is embarrassing. It's not just what happened in Miami-Dade, right? Because we've talked about the two different strategies. Do you go heavy in your blue counties and try to run up the score? Or do you work hard in the blue counties, do as best you can, and try to pull away what you can in rural counties? Well, we didn't do either. And that is a leadership issue at our party.
Yeah. Go ahead, Christian, and then Alan. Christian, my question to you, Christian, is because I know you've been, you and I, we've talked, and you've been critical of not just the Florida Democrat, but the direction the Democratic Party has gone, from jump. Like I look at the numbers, and I see that Biden has this record number of people that have, turned out to vote. And am I wrong for thinking that Bernie Sanders could have been? I know I shouldn't say the B word right now. Go ahead.
Let's say this. Okay, what we were told, the Biden campaign, what they wanted to do was I was told early on, we don't need your part of the coalition. We don't need progressives. We can win without you. So they intended to reach out to the more establishment Republicans, right? So they did that, and then we get really close to losing. They came really close to losing this time. It was I think they can inspire their people by promising more things. Obviously, I think that's obviously one thing happening. I think what I've been working on is sort of a trust project. What we're doing with People Over Politics is I've actually identified a conservative guy I've been working with. And he also identified with Trump's populist message. He's he's able to realize that Trump was lying to him. He could see the actions, what's going on. So he was able to determine, obviously, the guy's not actually acting that way. But that's how we found each other, is that he wants populist things as well. So we're trying to work on a trust project, figuring out a way to talk about local issues. I think we can start building trust through local media is really what we're going to do. More of this, sharing and talking. So I'm actually encouraged by the results that we saw on Tuesday, because I think if the Democrats had won too handily, I think there's no lesson to be learned, but they're fearful enough to just to get, maybe we have their attention, because they can't go back to those numbers. Look at Trump built his numbers. He built his numbers, right? And when in a year when some county voted for a Democrat for president for the first time since Truman, they couldn't win one office, TJ. They didn't win one. They didn't overturn anybody. All the constitutional offices, the sheriff, down the ballot. So that is catastrophic, and it's embarrassing. And, so I think the question was, how do we build power within the Democratic Party? And I just know that this is true. Power is not ever given, right? You got to take it. So it's about organizing in this right here. It's about these conversations and then taking them private as well and organizing that way. But usually building different coalitions, by the way, right? Yeah. I think we all understand right now, wages haven't gone up in a long time, right? I think we got to get money out of politics, and we got to start talking about wages, how to make people's lives better, man. And I think that's going to motivate people. That's going to motivate people to vote. So you can't get mad at people in Opelika for not going out and voting. All I saw on MSNBC was voter shaming. It was low black performance. Like, really, low black performance. Yeah. The votes are guaranteed for them. So I say motivate them. Get us off the couch. If you guys were going to vote out of fear, that was what motivated you, well, then you would have voted with us anyway. So, yeah, we can make an argument that Bernie might have won. I mean, but whatever. The bottom line is, let's get to work is the way I look at it.
That's what I saw when I was looking at the numbers. And I know people didn't want me to really say that. I'm going to go to you, Anthony, but I'm going to start with Alan, because I want to touch on something that Donna said. Donna, you were critical of some of the rappers that were out here, like Lil Wayne and Ice Cube. And I mean, I'm critical of all of them. And I've said this before, and Alan, you know this. I'm critical of all of them. It's almost like, why do these politicians think that these rappers are the leaders of Black society? Like, that's almost like, it's almost offensive to me that Common is getting these checks to come out here and perform. When's the last time Common had an album that we was really like, yo, that was galvanizing the Black community to come out to vote? Just because he was in Selma. Yes.
I wasn't even invited. It was supposed to be for Black leaders in Tampa. I saw it on the internet.
He was in Orlando. Just because he was in the movie Selma doesn't mean he was actually an organizer that can organize people to go over a bridge. I want to ask you, Alan, do you feel like people like Lil Wayne, Ice Cube, even content like the hip hop influence, do you feel like it's something that needs to be tapped into, or something that really the electorate really shouldn't have taken serious in anyway?
I think there will always be a place and for a while there's been a place in which entertainment and politics cross, simply because it's just kind of is blowing a bullhorn and getting the audience to the yard, right? You wave the candy in front of the people, and then once you get them there, you spread your message. I don't have a problem with that. Everything is about marketing. Everything is about promotion, right? So, I mean, in that sense, there are going to be entertainers. It was weird looking at people kind of criticize when I saw like Offset and 2 Chainz, kind of like performing their records at rallies as if this is some sort of new phenomenon. It's not a new phenomenon.
Jeezy was at the table.
Jeezy. I mean, this is not new. This is not new at all. You meet the people where they are, and then if the people are going to come to see their favorite artists, and then you bring them to the yard, and then you spread your message. I don't have a problem with that. As long as they are, being used they're used in a capacity to just do that, to just get the message out. Now, I do think that you have on the flip side when you have people like Lil Wayne or Ice Cube, which a little bit less than Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne kind of came out and just did a full endorsement of Trump, pretty much, and he did not write that.
Didn't endorse Trump. Am I wrong? Why do we keep saying that?
No. That's what I said. I said Wayne came out fully.
No. I was just correcting. I was correcting that for the. Like he did it. He wanted a specific Black agenda. Now, was he wrong? Let me ask everybody. Or Alan, let me ask you, and I'll start with you. Was he wrong for not meeting with Kamala Harris on that scheduled conference call?
I don't necessarily. I don't know what happened with the conference call. I know from my understanding, it was they told him as far as the contract that he had in mind. He said that, that's something that we could talk about, but after the election, mind you, this is a month before the election. The Trump campaign kind of pandered to him and made a couple word adjustments on their 2-page PDF and kind of pacified him that way. But I do believe that he made a mistake in being vocal about one side being quote unquote more receptive than the other. And because once you get into the details of that, you realize it was just a ploy. And I feel like Ice Cube has been around long enough, and especially someone who's been around the music business, which is one of the dirtiest businesses in the game. They know, and he should know when people are just being used for their likeness. So I was disappointed in that. But yeah, he did make a mistake for sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Anthony? What's your take on the presidential election thus far? I wanted to make sure I got you in there.
No, beautiful. Thank you, brother. I want to go real quick back to what Brother Allen said about Cube should have known. Brother Allen is right, because Cube was the first brother from NWA who realized that Jerry was screwing him over. So that makes me wonder about what his real motivations are. But also we got to go back to what Sister Donna said about aggrandizing, individuals and celebrity activists who are not necessarily grassroots. It's no disrespect to Cube. I love his music, you know what I'm saying? But like at the end of the day, when it comes to like mobilizing communities and grassroots Black agendas, I'm going to listen to you, Brother TJ, and Sister Donna before Cube, you know what I'm saying, who's wealthy and no wealthy people. But going back on like what we want to think about the elections. First thing, because Brother Dwight brought this up, I gotta say, and this is gonna give some shine to you Floridians, and I'm speaking truth because I'm talking about my own team. The Democrats are the New York Giants of politics. Okay, no defense, no offensive line, and an overrated white quarterback that turns the ball over at critical parts of the game. That's the Democrats.
Not historically. Now
you're talking about the current. As long as you're talking about my Jets, I'd rather be with the Jets.
I'm just getting all the shots today.
But I'm talking about the Giants because they were in Tampa Bay. And this is the Democrats, right? Like halftime was the polls where they should have taken the Senate, but then they still lost the game. How do you lose in Maine to Susan Collins? Brother Christian, there was $5 million waiting for her opponent because of how she voted on Kavanaugh. The people just raised $5 million for anybody to run against Susan Collins. And Gideon still lost. You got Cunningham in North Carolina. I don't know, whatever, what happened with that. But this Senate should have easily been flipped. And amazingly, again, this Democratic Party will have to count on Black people to save their white asses in Georgia, where there are now going to be 2 Senate runoff seats. I'm sure Sister Donna is going to get hired to do some damage there. But again, so Brother Dwight is right. Sister Donna is right. Brother TJ, the bottom line is that there's one of my favorite scenes from that movie Ocean's 13 when Don Cheadle dresses up as the biker and he goes to the casino and he said, do you know what Chuck Berry said every night before counting off 1, 2, 3, 4? Pay me my money. And that's what Black people are going to have to be like with Biden right now, or there's going to be major catastrophe in the midterm elections. One more thing that people are not talking about, incredibly serious, is that this is a census year, friends, and that the Republicans are going to gerrymander these districts in majority-controlled Republican state legislatures. You know what I'm saying? And they're basically going to engineer a House hegemony. The Democrats lost 5 seats, and I know that. I'm sorry to say this. I don't mean to disrespect my elders, but Kuhn Clyburn was like trying to like make that not seem so bad. You know what I'm saying? But like, you lost 5 seats in the House. You lost Senate seats that you should have won. Like you should have definitely won. It goes back to what Sister Donna has said, that it has become this corporate consultancy class of people who are not even from the community. Why would I talk to anybody but you, TJ, when I want to do Orlando organizing, or Sister Donna, or Brother Dwight when I'm down in Miami? Why am I going to bring in somebody from Boston, you know what I'm saying, to come and organize folk in Miami or in Philly or wherever it is, and even in Jackson, Mississippi? And this is the last thing I'll say before I pass it on, because we were talking about vote by mail. Trump voted by mail. People need to understand that Trump voted by mail. But last and 2 more things is that, like, yes, Brother Dwight hit it. We have to stop amorphizing the Hispanic Latino community, because that is an ethnicity and not a race. There's a difference between Afro-Latino, Indigenous Latino, and white Hispanics. George Zimmerman was Hispanic, and Jennifer Lopez.
Explain that to folks, because and explain that, because I know they get that confused. And I'm gonna get Christian and Dwight. The next thing, brace yourselves because we're gonna be talking about Miami. Explain the difference because people know.
If you're doing socioeconomic analysis, right? Races are black, white, Asian Pacific Islander, and indigenous folk, right? Hispanic is an ethnicity. It is not a race. Sister Donna could be Hispanic or Latino or Latina. Brother Dwight could be like, yo, bro, I've been to Colombia, to Buenaventura, like looking at like black folk in Colombia who could easily be my uncles from Sierra Leone. Like, I'm like bugging. Like, that's Uncle Lansana right there. It looks just like Uncle Lansana. Remembering the fact that besides other than the United States, the Western Hemisphere country that got the most African slaves was Brazil, not even the United States, B. So what I'm trying to say is that you have the Afro-Cuban. That's a form of music that was influenced by the motherland. You have bomba in Puerto Rico. That's African music. So what I'm saying is that like white people are Hispanics as well as black people as well as indigenous people. You can't amorphize that because Puerto Ricans, Boricuas have a different mentality than, as Brother Christian was saying, than to our Cuban sisters and brothers. And when you don't understand the nuances of that, you don't have good outreach. You don't have good grassroots organizing. You're not going to dare organize a Puerto Rican the same way you're going to organize a Cuban. You get stabbed for that shit. You know what I'm saying? So like you have to understand these nuances. Just like with black folk, you're not going to organize, a black brother or sister who moved down from New York City to Florida the same way you're going to organize a Haitian. And the Democrats need to understand that. Just like they break down white people, right? Non-college educated, mythological white working class and whatnot. They break that down into specific categories. But for us, it's just that we all like basketball. We all eat fried chicken. We all eat plátanos, and that's it. Just go give him some food and whatnot, and bring black celebrity whoever or Enrique Iglesias, and you're gonna get our votes. That's the thing. That's why the Democrats are also losing. They have never understood our people, and they've never understood how to talk to our people. Even Barack Obama, and I know Sister Donna knows what I'm talking about.
I want to speak on this if I can, TJ.
Go ahead.
I know this is a delicate thing, so I want to, say thank you and acknowledge you for appreciating the nuance of that. But I think this is a perfect example of why we got to get away from this type of politics, because trying to learn how every culture takes and moves, it's impossible to cater to everybody without pissing somebody off. What we need to start doing is talking about economics, top down, and stop talking about colors and left and right. Got to change our language. We want more out of this, and we want to change the system. Stop being crazy, like you said, TJ. Stop doing the same thing over and over again. We got to start talking about money, bro. And that's why I'm working with the Republican, because he's broke too. He don't have money in it. It's like we want some of the same things. So what we've decided to do is we ran a few candidates out in a small area out in Kissimmee, and we had 4 to the 5 won out of the city. So now we're going to just start calling meetings. Just start playing, and that'll be it. These people don't start coming to the meetings, and we'll start making plans. And I think the plans have to be about economics. I think it's just a cleaner way to approach it. We need more, I think, universal type programs and institutions. This way everybody has buy-in also, and, everybody's less suspicious of one another. I think we got to do that.
I definitely want to get you guys to listen to this clip, because I want to have a larger conversation. We're going to talk about the hypothetical. Let's say that Biden wins, and I want to talk about the Senator Kamala Harris effect, and really when you gave me a great segue when we talk about economics and what people should expect for their turnout. Well, let's talk about the different demographics, but I do want to play this video first.
You support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen, again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalized discrimination and segregation, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal but still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing. We have disparities around education. We have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, Black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something about that and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the LIFT Act. Give people who are making $100,000 or less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you would explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this: any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
Oh dear, real quick, brother. I'm sorry, I have to respond real quick. I know Sister Donna's ready. Kamala is a shape. She went from Booker T. Washington to James Baldwin to Booker T. Washington to James Baldwin on some trickle-down social justice, first and foremost, and then went on some James Baldwin tip of like the truth that sets black people free will also set white people free, which is very, very true. But Kamala, come on, there's no trickle-down social justice. I mean, this is the same thing that got Brother Bernie in trouble, is the assumption but the assumption also was that FDR's New Deal was going to benefit everybody, but we also know who it didn't benefit.
Well, I wanted to before you chimed in. I wanted, because we got people that are asking questions, and we have Zodred. He asked a question. I'm gonna pose it to the panel. He says, "Can someone on the panel say?" I'm gonna paraphrase. What policy of Joe Biden is going to implement for the black community? I'm going to add the word specifically for the black community. So this ties into black people showing up and really saving the Democratic Party, as we've all attested to. So what do black folks, it's like here we go again. We said we saved the soul of America is the tagline. So
everyone's going to have to wear a mask. So black people have to wear a mask. So black people are saved also. You're welcome.
That's so mandate.
Yeah,
I want to offer up.
Yeah, so go ahead, Senator Dwight Bullard, and go around the horn for anybody that, any policy that specifically is going to benefit African Americans in a Biden-Harris administration.
So this is the troubling problem of this question always happening and repeating itself over and over and over again. Like, what is this good white man going to do for us? You know what I'm saying? What is this good white woman going to do for us? What I need, like, the idea of a black person being like, well, so what are you going to do for me? Like, is insane, considering we have the answers to our own question, right? Like,
you think so?
So, listen, I know so, right? I know so because hell, we're talking about, as Anthony pointed out, Baldwin's written about this, Washington's written about this, Jawanza Kunjufu's written about this. You know what I'm saying? Like, all these people have dictated and laid out, time after time, the antidote, right, to solve our problems. And if we could somehow make that or put that into a formalized policy, what that would look like. What ends up happening is every election cycle, and it really makes me cringe, we get at the table with folks and be like, so what are you going to do for us? Tell me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to hear what you got to say, right? Like, I remember sitting down with Pete Buttigieg, right, during the cycle. And he's all talking about, I got the Douglas plan, a blah, blah this and a blah, blah that. And I told Pete Buttigieg, I was like, look, I was listening because you had all these local so-called business gurus around, right?
Yeah.
Who were just deathly quiet, right? So you're sitting here, all y'all are talking about lack of contracting any day of the week, how the city and the county aren't paying you this or that and the third. And now you're going to sit back and listen to a dude from South Bend, Indiana, explain to you how Black folks are going to benefit from his so-called plan that most of you haven't looked at. So I had to step in and be like, Mayor Pete, with all due respect, you're calling this the Douglas Plan, and Frederick Douglass was, by and large, one of the most important and influential Black people in the country. But let's take it a step further to Booker T. Washington, who laid out an economic plan for Black people back in the late 1800s, but also in being invited to the White House, was the last Black person to be invited to the White House until like the 1960s. So there was like a 50-plus year gap where no Black person was allowed to set foot in the White House under any administration. And I said, the reason they do that is because y'all use political convenience when dealing with Black people. You like to tell us stuff, you like to make promissory notes, and you like to do it until you get elected. And what I'm not going to allow you to do is to come in and kind of create this scenario where we can't influence what exactly it is that we want. I don't care who your experts are. Your plan should always be fluid based on the immediate concerns of the people. But here's the more important thing. The accountability mechanism that has to be put in place, that you have to prioritize us in the first 100 days. Because what ends up happening with these folks is they get in there and they'll be like, well, you know, want to make sure we do tactics for these folks.
What does that look like? What does that look like for us for the first 100 days? Mm-hmm.
But this what I'm saying is there has to be, like, in this moment, like here's an opportunistic moment, right, where Black people are saving the democracy once again.
Mm-hmm.
And the notion of the idea that I need to call somebody to then put a bug in somebody's ear is out the door.
Correct. I agree.
Out the freaking door, meaning that the steps that have to be taken, like, here's the thing, November 3rd happens, let's say Joe Biden finally wins November whatever, 12th. In that time period between now and January 21st, if a TJ Cole isn't at somebody's table, if a Donna Davis is not at somebody's table, if a Anthony is not at somebody's table, crafting, making the demand, and explicitly talking about what it is that we want, and not being lectured to about, well, the Lift Every Voice plan says this. Bump that shit. Here's the question.
Yep.
Where's the investment you're going to make in HBCUs, and when is it going to happen? Which is it going to move in the agriculture bill, or is it going to move in the transportation bill?
Right.
Because I know enough about government to know that you're not going to do an individual allocation to these things. So I need to know which package the Black stimulus is going to be in. And when they sit there and say, well, you know, the same thing, you know, Senator Harris was talking about, well, you know, well, no. I need to know, because in the first PPP, you missed out on Black folks. Right. Black businesses missed out. So if we're going to do another stimulus explicitly around Black businesses that have closed, the 40% of Black businesses that have closed, what's the revitalization money in that explicitly? Is it going to Black chambers of commerce? Is it going through the SBA with deliberate language around those most egregiously impacted by all those things? And that's the sneaky thing of government, is everyone will turn around and be like, well, we can't do stuff for Black people. No, fine. Don't put it as Black people. Put in the language that this money is only going to go to those that have been uniquely impacted by COVID, disproportionately impacted by COVID. Or this is going to go only to these particular zip codes. And they just happen to be Detroit, Philadelphia, Liberty City, Paramore, etc. Right?
That's
like
important.
that is the specificity of policy that we fail to do and fail to influence, because we sitting around waiting on somebody to be like, where's my reparations check? It ain't gonna happen, champ.
Right.
It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, so we want our stimulus check and our W-2s first this year.
Exactly.
Like that's a non-negotiable.
Listen,
if there's somebody
if I can knows where I live, the child support people know where I live, so you can definitely know where to send my check.
I think if there's somebody more articulate than me, I think this, that this Medicare idea could be an inkling, could be a way towards reparations, a way of making reparations universal, so to speak, because you're right. We get into this whole idea of, what are we going to do for the Black community when we get in there? And we're talking about paying for votes and what we're going to do for the Hispanics. Now we're going to do for each community's got to get, and I know we can look at the Black community and we can point to specific things that happen, given the primary that actually does make it pretty clear what the Black community has done for the Democratic Party. But I just think we create animosity on the other side when we have programs like that. We got to find a way, like he said, to make it universal in nature. We target zip codes, that are disproportionately.
When you say create animosity,
I want to hear this, Alan.
No, when you say create animosity,
I think it gives people who think differently than us cover, and it allows the Reagans of the world to call people welfare queens and kind of blow that issue up bigger. I think if we have more universal programs, you can't say it's just for Black and brown people. Although we're benefiting mostly from it, I think that still is a win, right? Yes, that's what we want.
Well, I think we have to. I think our people, at the end of the day, are less concerned with the optics, right? People need help, right? And I mean, and plenty of other pockets of marginalized people have had their needs specifically met, and I don't remember them looking at us or looking at someone else and saying, we may not like that help because it may, people may look at us X, Y, but they want the help. The help is what is needed first. And I understand what you're saying as far as, as far as maybe, people looking at us some sort of way. But I can tell from the majority of people I know is that we don't necessarily care. The PR that America has done on Black people,
it's about will it
already
stick?
in the gun.
Will it have staying power, or will we have a Trump revolution like we just did? You see, we went around the Irish because the Irish were stigmatized when they got their handouts.
These policies that have been kicking our asses for 200 years have stuck.
What is that?
The policies that have whooped our asses for 200 years have stuck. And I want to see a PR campaign against Black codes, against Jim Crow, against lynching.
What's the PR campaign?
I wanted to ask. Let me pose a question. Let me pose this question. I want to go to Andrew to get you to chime in on this, because Kamala Harris has touted herself as this, the top cop, in public spaces. She's also talked about, and embrace. People say, well, she's embracing her Blackness. Black woman from an HBCU. She's the first, potentially first African American woman to be a VP. Should she be the one to tackle criminal justice reform and really make that her push in order for this to stick, as her being an attorney as well?
In an easy word, no. Like, I have gotten, logically. So TJ, you guys know this. Like, criminal justice reform, like, that's my jam, right? That is everything that I do every day. I am working to reform the criminal justice system. That is why I ran for sheriff, because I believe, and I still fundamentally believe, that is where you change the criminal justice system, is the policies and procedures of where the police meet the community. That is where you change the criminal justice system. I've gotten over her record as a prosecutor, in that at that time, that is what was expected, particularly of a woman running to be an attorney general of a state, even a state as liberal as California. The issue that I have, if I had to pick one candidate from all the Democratic nominee or Democratic candidates who were running for president, who had the best criminal justice reform plan, by far, Secretary Julian Castro. He understands the issues in a way that the vast majority of Democrats, period, do not. And he's been in a cabinet before. He is also an attorney. If I had to pick one person right now to work on criminal justice reform issues, that's who I would pick. I am biased. I have met Secretary Castro a whole bunch of times. I've talked to him. He has been a mentor from a distance, if you will. But, and TJ, you know this, like when I was thinking through policies, it's incredibly important to me to reach out to the people who are going to be most impacted by those policies. And if those policies don't make sense, then I need to change. The people who are affected by the policies are not the folks that need to change. It's the people who want to implement policies that need to change. And we are so bad at messaging. We are so bad at responding to messaging,
the Democratic Party,
that we don't get in a room. Okay. Yeah, we don't get in a room with somebody and we're not able to articulate a message, particularly white Democrats. We are not, most of us, I will say, are not comfortable having race conversations in front of people of color, whether it's black folks, whether it's Latin folks, whether it's Asian folks. We're just not comfortable because we don't want to say the wrong thing. And what I've tried to get to folks is, if your heart is in the right place, and if you know and you have a history of showing that what you want to do is change a structure that has, for as long as this place has been a country and before, has been systematically designed to keep black people subjugated to everybody else. If you go into a room and you're comfortable having a conversation, it's not about talking. A conversation is not talking. A conversation is also listening. And we don't do that enough. And that's why we are where we are. That's why we only show up to certain neighborhoods every 3 years, every 4 years, every election year. And it has to change. If we want to win statewide, we have to be comfortable going in, and particularly white people have to be comfortable going into rooms of other white people and oftentimes making those other white people uncomfortable. And until we're willing to do that, we're just going to be in a tough spot. It's not an attack on whether you can have a conversation. Yeah. You have to be educated enough and willing to have the conversation, even when you're going to make people uncomfortable. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think what you're talking about is white supremacy and the intrinsic fear that white people have of this, what they call the browning of America. Let's talk exit polls now, and I think we'll go around the horn. White women. What does it say to you when you have white men? Majority of white men voted for Trump. White women increased their turnout for Donald Trump. I believe it was in the, let me look at, was it 50? Was it 50? 55. It's 55%, right? From 53 in 2016. So all the marching and all the rallying that we're doing, it just seems like what does it say? Like, how do we? And I don't think it's a we problem, because I don't think we need to fix that shit. And I think you touched on that, Andrew. Like, how does that change? Because let's even talk about white women, despite their own self-interest, they seem to always go to the polls and align themselves with the white supremacist power structure because they're comfortable with their seat at the table. Is that a fair assessment?
The white women in general, and I will speak briefly about the white women in my family.
Okay.
That's safe.
My mother, my aunt, my grandmother, my aunt, she was a career teacher. She has been a Democrat as long as I can remember. My mother and grandmother have been very apolitical forever, but they fall into those traps of, well, you work hard, you do the things you're supposed to do, pull yourself up by your, like, they believed that growing up. And we've been in poverty my whole life. So I don't understand logically, but then again, they grew up in a different time. It doesn't excuse it. It doesn't make it okay. But my mom and my grandmother voted for Mayor Gillum 2 years ago. My mom moved and didn't update her registration. I'm just going to let that be. My grandmother in a hospital bed just had a pacemaker with a defibrillator put in her chest last week, filled out her absentee ballot, and got it turned in for Joe Biden because she was tired of, as she said, that gross orange man on the TV. And there's the conversations that I'm able to have are different than the conversations that y'all are going to be able to go in rooms and have. There are still rooms in this country that I can get into that you can't.
Yeah.
And I have a personal mission to make people uncomfortable in those rooms.
But how do we get enough white people to feel comfortable enough to try to systematically dismantle white supremacy in the ideology of it, in their basically the religion of white supremacy? How do we get them to unsubscribe to that shit? That's fucking up the country.
I have read as many books as, I mean, I would challenge a lot of folks my age as many books. I mean, even the sort of mainstream ones. Your, Michelle Alexander. The one book that explained the economic inequalities in this country the best to me is called The Color of Law. Okay, it's by a gentleman named Richard Rothstein.
I have that book.
And that book talks about how redlining, but even before that, from the GI Bill that black soldiers weren't able to use. And like, this is coming from a military family. My wife is active duty in the military right now in the Army. I spent 7.5 years in the Army. So like, we're a military family. And to go back less than a generation. And one thing we don't talk about enough is this democracy, this country is getting close to 300 years old. This democracy is maybe 80-ish years old before everybody was actually on paper allowed to vote. Like, this democracy is not that old. And being willing to go in those places, have those conversations, and educate people in a way that makes sense to them, that's a messaging thing that we have to fix as white folks. That's just, it's something we have to do. And there's not a way around that. It's going to be hard, but also showing that, like, the economy is not a pie, right? Like, you don't lose your piece when somebody else takes a piece. That's not how this works. Right. As you have more ingredients, as you bring more, it's a bigger damn pie, and more people get to eat. And I don't know about y'all, but I like pie. And it's time to make sure that we are including everybody in these spaces. And I agree with what Christian said. Like, if you make it about the money, make it about how can somebody make their children's lives better than their life, and their grandchildren's lives better than their children's lives. That is where you talk to people. You can go talk to the most ardent Trump supporter, maybe not the most ardent one, but you can talk to most folks. And if you can make it about how they can economically be in a better place and show that helping your neighbor actually puts you in a better economic place,
right,
is a conversation that you can have with way more than 50% of our country.
Well, let me get Donna to chime in, then I'll get to you, Senator Dwight Bullard, because there also was an uptick in the exit polls of black men who supported Donald Trump from 2016, and even black women. I think it went up for what, 4 points, 4%. Right? 4%. Yeah, I went up 4%. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what Andrew was saying, and also, is that an indictment of the disenfranchisement that black folks feel with the Democratic Party, or is it that you would think that, with a first ever African-American, the African-American woman in Kamala Harris as VP, that black women, although they came out in droves for the Biden-Harris ticket, you wouldn't think that Trump would increase his total from 2016. That's for you, Donna. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts were 30 minutes ago when it was said that, I've been suffering for a long time.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, when it was said, this is what I mean when I say we say center black women, and then we see a black woman get upset and we just zoom right past her because nobody wants to deal with the upset black woman. And we have to do that. We have to make our praxis match up with our intentions. And so having said that, I'll say that it's easy to say, it's easy for us to say that we should make it about the economics. When people live in a world that tells them when they show up into a room and their name was, Amber McCormick, and they come into the room and now it's a little frosty in there. They know that it's not about the money. When my friend Corey Weckerly was working remotely, his name is Corey Weckerly. His mother is white. When he appeared, when they said, you have to come down now to work in West Palm Beach. And when he got there, they wanted to cut his salary in half. So yeah, it is about the money, but just not in the way that we're implying. Also, Black people flocked to Roosevelt. 75% of Black people said, hey, we're going to go over here and see these beautiful programs that are going to liberate us because we'll have things that we never had before. And then we have, 40 years later, people are in Cabrini Green killing each other. So we have been preyed upon by programs that were supposed to be universally applied, and that didn't happen. So the problem with Black people, the reason why we don't accept that, and the reason why we get upset when people say it's not about race, it's about economics, is that we used to be the economics. So we used to be the Christmas presents. And so you have to look at a people's unique history, and you're saying, hey, we can't cater to every single person in this country. First of all, when we started this, there was 3 groups of people in this country. There were the indigenous people, there were white people, and there were their Black slaves. Now, Bacon's Rebellion, all of these people were working together, right? And then they rebelled against the planter elite because they could see what was happening to them. And that hastened the onset of chattel slavery. We have to know our history before we start telling people what they can and cannot say. So if we know where we're rooted, and everybody doesn't know this, people just know I am getting my ass beat by the police because I'm Black, right? Because I'm not light-skinned enough. And so we have to address that. We can't simply dismiss that. And while I agree, I would like nothing more than, because I know for a fact that if I were judged based on merit alone, I would be in a completely different place in my existence, in my financial life, in my academic life, in my where I'm able to purchase a home. All of it would be different if my skin were not Black. So it's very difficult for me and millions of other Black people to accept that if we just talk about economics, we're going to get there, because that hasn't happened yet, because they have created actual programs, death squads, and military industrial complexes. Entire systems and institutions have been built to oppress and exploit us. And you cannot just dismiss that and make it about economics. This country has never done that for us. It's never just said Americans. It says Black Americans. It says,
what would you like?
I'm going to finish.
Yeah.
We did not create this. Everything was Black. We had a Black pageant and a white pageant. You had a Black pool. We had Black water fountains. You went in the back door. That was in my parents' lifetime. They're still alive. And so I think that attempt to erase history by sanitizing it, by homogenizing it, is in itself an affront that I think that intellectually, I get what you're saying. If we could simply move away from that, we may be able to leave it behind. I can assure you that my canvassers faced unprecedented violence in Orlando, Osceola, and Orange counties this year. A guy traced to do with a Trump prosthesis on. This is really serious stuff. These people's hearts.
How do you plan to fix that?
How do I plan to fix it?
I mean, how do policies fix that?
How do you plan to fix the fact that we're more concerned about the PR of asking for what we're told
than
we are about?
Let Donna finish, and I'll let you respond.
Sure.
Go ahead, Donna.
I am addressing one thing that I'd like for you to just hear me out.
Yeah.
You cannot erase our history, cannot erase what has been done under the color of law. You cannot erase 500 years of oppression, specifically guided by people's complexions. And say what you're saying makes sense on its face, but it cannot work in a society where if I am at a resort, I go to a lot of resorts, and I am more than once asked for my pool pass. I'm there because I have money. I'm not allowed to enjoy it because I'm Black. How do you plan to deal with that?
So Donna, my face might trick you. It's possible. Oh, okay.
She's still listening.
She's still listening. Go ahead.
Oh, wait. I mean, really? Okay. I don't know why, but maybe Donna thinks her pain is more than mine, or she's got some deeper anger than I do.
Didn't say that.
I'm sure you don't. We're both going through some stuff also. All of us are. So the fact that your whole that you got animosity or something that starts turning towards me is an interesting thing, but we'll deal with that by itself. I guess the thing is, I have a long history with the Democratic Party in particular in this town. With being in my it's treated as I've seen a lot of interesting things happen with the Democratic Party, and I expect one thing out of it. What you're telling me is that you don't want to talk about the economics of it, and you don't want to
Didn't say that.
You don't want to separate them necessarily. Anyway, what I'm saying is everyone's trying to find a remedy. Usually remedy has to do with economics. And what I'm telling you, the reason why I'm saying that we should start trying to changing our language and putting it around economic policies is because everybody's impacted by it and everybody has pain. And if we start trying to make policies that measure your pain against my pain, against the next guy's pain, that's not sustaining, and it's going to create animosity. It's not about public relations down the road. It's a matter of sustainability. And so
I don't think that giving
lesson, because I think Donna has me misunderstood with somebody who doesn't have a history in this town, doesn't understand what's happening here. I want to make sure you understand the history. My father
don't erase it. Don't erase it. Don't make it a semantics thing. Is all I said.
You know that. The reason why he left the Democratic Party, he left and became a Republican because of stuff like this. Stuff just like this, identitarian nonsense that it railroads people out of the party. It makes them not interested in it.
But I don't think that having Black people specifically ask for tangible resources because of their turnout or because they saved the Democratic Party time after time after again in prioritizing what's best for us. I don't think that should diminish or devalue another community.
It's not a matter of valuing it. I don't mean that.
Yeah. Additionally, even if we're just starting from an economic base, the dollar is not the same for everybody.
But in those communities,
and that's the issue. A dollar for a white man is not a dollar for a Black woman. So
let him finish, Christian.
I'm wondering if Andrew's money spent differently than the Black guys in his neighborhood, because I bet they didn't. His money spent the same. I mean, Andrew's a white guy who probably could have used some of that help.
No, this is not an opinion. A white man makes, what is it? Is $1 is compared to 53 cents to a Black woman. So
the white guy living next to you that makes that.
We're talking about a general economic basis. Yes, the white dollar goes farther because they make more money.
Okay,
I think that has to be addressed. Even if you just want to talk economics, you have to address that first.
I hear you. Okay,
because there is economic disproportion between what the skin color and what your gender are.
Is that what we're talking about?
Hold on, let him because
I was just saying, like, even if we want to get
so we can't hear everybody.
Yeah, even if we just want to get to a base of economics, we still have to come to equality first before everyone can just say, okay, now let's just talk economics.
See, I hear you, but I think
everything is ingrained in race and gender, and so those are the things that people are saying need to be addressed before we can just start saying, okay, let's start at an even base of money, because we're not at an even base.
I understand. I get what you're saying exactly. I follow you on that. I get you, but understand this: when we speak in these numbers, you're saying, for instance, we have to get equality first, meaning you think white men and Black men we should all have equal salaries. But I wonder if you think that equality is aspirational or is it actually a tangible thing, meaning we shouldn't go forward and do anything until everybody's equal. I wonder if that's really what we believe.
In a perfect society, yes, we need to sit down, we need to dismantle the system and figure how everyone could be on the same playing field.
But we're not a perfect society. We know
that.
Correct.
Senator Dwight Bullock, what are your thoughts?
So to Donna's point, and also to Christian's point, right? Like it's a failure to comprehend how ingrained white supremacy is in our society and racism is in our society, right? Like, and to Donna's point, we're talking about the inception of the thing called America, right? Is intertwined with the notion of Black hatred and racism. And that's that. And I want people to understand that, because it also dovetails into the Latino discussion, because when you are a new immigrant to this country, and sometimes it could be a Black immigrant as well. It is, how is my success going to be defined, juxtaposed to the people who are on the bottom rung of society historically, right? Like that is ingrained in the mindset of a person coming from colonialism, right? It's like, I'm coming to America because they perpetuated this notion of the American dream, but I also understand that the American dream is always going to be, am I doing better than Tyrone and them? And if I can convince myself that I've done that, then that is my success. And this election is primed to that, right? Is like, we talk about this notion of the white factory worker. The white factory worker is like, I've been getting my ass kicked for the last 40 years. I've seen multiple of my companies close. I'm in a perpetual state of skyfall, right? Yet and still, I'm going to go ahead and put this marker down for Donald Trump because I want to feel good enough to remind myself that I'm better than the Black lives that don't matter, right? And so conceptually, we have to understand that at its foundation. But to your point, Christian, yes, we can argue economics. We can argue the necessity of it, but also have to be mindful that we don't necessarily have good faith actors in any other group that is coming at it with, you know what, I want to argue on your merits. They're simply saying, you have people that intentionally or unintentionally are coming into a space where they're just like, okay, I'm good, but as long as I can remind myself that I'm better,
right,
then I'm even better, right? So
like a totem pole.
I'll use Silicon Valley as an example, and then I'll shut up, right? Silicon Valley comes along when they're just like, we're different. We have a different mindset than Wall Street. We're starting out here. Technology has no color, blah, blah, blah. Until all of a sudden you're looking around and you're realizing that it's just predominantly white and Asian. And then you're like, well, damn. We founded Google, we founded Yahoo, we founded Microsoft, and never once did it pop in our minds that there are credible Black engineers, credible Black CIS folks, or whatever the case may be. And this is a matter of conscience of America, that it is okay to be exclusionary, especially to be exclusionary of Black bodies, and especially to be exclusionary of Black bodies when it comes to the very economics that we're talking about. Again, unconsciously sometimes, right? I hear people talk about the light bulb all the time, but don't talk about Lewis Latimer for shit, right? I hear people talk about architecture all the time, but don't talk about Benjamin Banneker for shit until February, right? You're talking about somebody who literally designed Washington, D.C., right? There's not a physical marker, statue anywhere around that city. Jefferson's got one. Washington's got one. Abraham Lincoln's got one. And the guy who designed the very city that it sits on is a blip in a history book. That is criminal, but it's also indicative of what we have to eradicate in order for this thing that you're talking about to actually work. Like, I get moving the steps forward, but you got to remember, Black folks come from a tradition of always moving the ball down the field in spite of. So we have to also be aspirational in our thought process and pick up allies along the way, without a doubt. But we also need, Andrew's point earlier, folks to have courageous conversations about deconstructing the mythology that other people have created around race, coming from their own cultures, coming from caste systems, coming from places overseas, come from these spaces that they're literally coming into a place where they will work at McDonald's, they will work at Subway, they will work at this, and me as the person purchasing the sandwich, them still looking at me like, I'm glad you can afford the sandwich, but man, my life is way better than yours. And I'm sitting here making more money than them. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a that's a psychosis
Yeah.
that we have to eradicate.
And
I definitely appreciate you touching on that. Listen, I would love to have this conversation go a lot longer. And I know last time we was up here for like 2-3 hours breaking this stuff down. And I'm sure we'll have more conversations to go. But as we do on the Soapbox, you guys are all regulars, you know, we go around the horn and tell everybody what's our moral of the story. I'm gonna give everybody a platform. Donna, I was gonna start with you. Should I start with you, or you want me to circle back?
Come back to me.
All right. I'm gonna start with Andrew. Andrew, go. This is your time to plug, and we'll tell us your moral of the story.
Yeah. So the moral of the story is politics is not politics. Politics is people. And if you are not able to go talk to people and meet people where they are, not where you want them to be, even where they are, and give them something aspirational to hold on to, we have to stop being the party that gets you to vote against something.
Right.
We need to be the party that gives you a candidate that is the only candidate you can vote for. We don't do that enough. When we do, we knock it out of the park. When we don't, we get what happened the other night.
Yep.
What I will say, just to kind of wrap this part up, I am going to work as hard as I've ever worked to make sure that 2022 doesn't look how Tuesday looked. That's going to be from a lot of angles, to include helping politically, to include helping with changing the structure of either FDP or local organizations, however I can help. And I'm going to continue to do that through multiple elections, but we have way too much talent in this state and way too many people in this state that know what the heck they're doing to continue to have these results. So I'm easy to find on social media. This is Mr. Darling 4 on all the things. Andrew Darling Law. You can find me wherever. I do mostly criminal defense stuff. I'm starting to get into more civil rights related stuff now, which are, you don't understand how the structures are until you see how at every single level of the legal system, the deck stacked against folks. And, you know, reach out to me. I'll help where I can. If you guys just want to, you know, have a conversation, you know, understand why I think the way that I do and how we can, you know, maybe spread some of that, that would be beneficial. But listen, thank you guys so much for allowing me to be a part of this space. TJ specifically, you know, Donna and Senator Bullard, Alan, my bad, Alan. I got to keep you up there with TJ. You know, y'all the official host. I know a lot of us, you know, spend a lot of time here. But hey, Christian as well, man. Look, I appreciate you guys, you know, bringing me in these spaces, and I promise that whatever I can do to make these outcomes different than they are, I'm gonna do. I'm not scared of work. So let's go to work.
Very cool.
Appreciate it. Donna, what's your moral of the story?
Well, after the last part of that conversation, the moral of the story for me is, as long as there are attempts to rewrite or erase aspects of the story, as long as there's a shallowness of understanding about how deep racism runs, how deep the vein runs, and how intricately it's woven into the fiber of how we engage at every level of our society, from economics to education to healthcare. And when we do assess them, we find that those systems have hierarchies, and we have to acknowledge those hierarchies. And while I understand that the oppression Olympics does not move us forward, I understand that a resolute refusal to actually examine those structures and why people are on the top and why people are on the bottom, that ignorance is going to keep us stuck exactly on the level that we're on. It's going to continue to give us Trumpism. It's going to continue to give us the notion that it'll compel us to oversimplify our issues. And as long as we're not looking deep, we won't get to the root, and we won't be able to eradicate our issues. Being radical means simply to grasp something at its source. And if we can't, we see radishes grow in the dirt. And so the word radical means root, actually. And so if we're not examining the root of something, if we're just going to say, oh, let's just change the dressing, let's just change what's in the window and we'll solve it, it hasn't worked yet. It won't work. And so I charge anybody that's listening to examine the roots of how we got to where we are, because it's really the only way out, the only way through hell. The only way to get out of hell is to go through it.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate you being on here and definitely shedding light and giving us the wisdom. Alan, what's your moral of the story, my man?
Oh man, the moral of the story today is, we've all done our civic duty and voted this week, but as everyone on this panel is an example of, it doesn't start there. Stop there, pardon me. So just continue to make your community better and make yourself better too. Make a pledge to yourself, even after voting, to figure out what's going to be the next step in your life and how you can improve your community. And even if it's just improving your family, taking a class or reading up on some new things and ideas that'll assist the next generation. Because at the end of the day, we are here to make the next generation better than we are. So, I just want everyone to keep that in mind. The work is not done. Make a pledge to yourself, make a pledge to your people, make a pledge to your community to keep on getting better one step at a time. And eventually we'll get where we need to be. Every day is a new opportunity to be better.
Appreciate you, fam. Thank you for everything that you do. Real quick, Amanda Castro gave a shout out to Donna. She said she loved your moral of the story. Amanda Castro is looking at us on YouTube. So for those who are watching us on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, any of our streaming services, and those who are listening to us overseas in UK and Portugal, for that we have a following. So, but thank you for the folks that are listening to us over there. Christian, yep. What's your moral of the story, my man?
I think I want to talk about it. I think the moral of the story for me has to do with our language and the way we communicate to one another. I think it's very cool that you invited us, me, TJ. I wanted to come talk and start telling our stories before a narrative gets too far away from us. I do like throwing these markers in the ground and going on record. This is a delicate conversations to have, and they're difficult to have, but they're necessary. And I'm not afraid to be the guy out there saying things that are uncomfortable. People question, where I'm from, my background, and how I feel comfortable to speak things often. But that's fine. We'll get there over time. I've got a background in this stuff, though. It comes from a place that's honest. I'm not here for any other reason because I want to try to help and move forward. But we got to be careful with our language. If someone suggests an idea and we cloak that, we change it and call it an erasure of a thing, that's the kind of thing where we're not being deliberate with our language, and we leave spaces open for people like Donald Trump to abuse it. You know what I'm saying? That really does happen. That stuff happens if we're not careful with the way we talk about them. And that's I think when we talk about how we want to shape the future, how we want it to look, we got to be careful about staying away from the individualism so much. I think we can learn a little bit from the Republicans about how they work and operate as a team, like the Borg. There's something to be learned there. It's checking our own individualism and working together as a team. Otherwise, we're going to end up splitting up with a bunch of parties looking out for their own interests. But let's keep this thing together and keep working. Thank you for the conversation. Andrew, we got to talk. I'm going to have you on People Over Politics soon. Figure out a way to get this done. I'm working in Osceola County a little bit now, trying to see what's going on over there.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Let me know.
Appreciate you being on, Christian. Who did I miss? I got every no, Senator Dwight. How could I forget? Senator Dwight Bullard. Look at me. Your moral of the story, sir.
Man, the moral of the story, since we're coming up on the holiday season, not a lot of folks fully appreciate this holiday, but I'm going to shout it out. Kwanzaa. One of the principles of Kwanzaa is collective work and responsibility, right? And I think that's a good summation of all the things that we need to do as a country in order to progress. The collective work part becomes so much easier when we're responsible enough to understand that this country is not has not been fun for people, right? And when we think about places like Detroit or places like Philadelphia or places like Atlanta that are once again trying to save democracy, save this country from itself, all I can think about is the Black experience and folks fully appreciating and understanding from whence we came. You know, we were the GDP of the South. We were the gross domestic product of the South. We helped establish the economy. Then we were audacious enough to migrate to the North and again became the GDP of the North in places like Chicago, Cleveland, and Philadelphia and Detroit, right? You know, we made the NFL a national and international brand. We made the NBA a national and international brand. You know, we have been the cornerstone of this country, but yet hiding in plain sight. And so the collective work is, again, easier when the country understands that they have a responsibility to honor the legacies and traditions of those folks, indigenous folks included, who have been too often exploited in order for people to enjoy the luxuries that they have today. Even in the midst of a pandemic, the idea that folks can continue to watch the TVs they watch, listen on these streaming services and do all these things, it does not happen without the existence, the work, and unfortunately the exploitation of people of color in this country. And we have to recognize that in order to move forward.
Thank you for your moral of the story. I definitely appreciate it. And my moral of the story is simply this. First, I want to thank everybody for on short notice coming in, and shout out to Jesse and Giovanni, our ladies that are our co-hosts on the podcast. They were not able to be on the podcast today because they have some personal things going on. We hope everything is straight, and they should be back next week and will be in full force. My moral of the story is this: today, I looked at a scene from the Remember the Titans, and it was a scene where Denzel Washington shows up. He's a coach, and he comes in, and he has the running back Petey raising his hand, smiling. I saw a lot of Black folks, looking at the election results and just smiling with their hands up, shaking. And he, in that scene in Remember the Titans, he goes up to Petey and says, "Put your hand down," and asked him, "Why are you smiling?" And my question for our community was, why are we smiling, right? And because I'm really concerned about what tangibles that we are going to get. I've seen Black folks come out and be civically engaged, do the grunt work. I'm seeing in Fulton County and all these different in Detroit and Milwaukee, I'm seeing Black folks that are doing the mail-in ballots, and they're being like, it's us, it's our energy, it's our power. We're the ones doing the grunt work, and I am definitely afraid of having a Biden-Harris administration slipping us the sleeping pill, where we are just docile. This too much has happened in this country that has affected our community. Too much of it happened for us not to see any progress for that work that we have put in collectively, whether it's social justice, whether it's working on campaigns and organizing on the grassroots level, whether it's African Americans, Black women running for office. Our collective, and I'm going to start, because they always tell you to put the gas mask on yourselves first before you can help anybody else. I want us to keep working and keep fighting and making sure, like you said, like Senator Dwight Bullock said, of the collective work. But I don't want us to take this administration as, hey, it's party time, where everything is going to be all good, because what we'll have another 4 years or another 8 years, like we did with the Obama administration, where we saw minimal progress, if that. And that's going
back to brunch. Brunch is over. That's out.
Yeah. So my thing is, I want us to be diligent in holding this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, potentially if they get elected by the time you guys listen to this, or by some chance, or even if Trump is elected, holding that whatever administration, their feet to the fire to the things that they have said that they were going to do. There's an accountability component to being civically engaged, and it's time that people and politicians start answering for the things that they said that they're going to do. And there's nothing wrong with us prioritizing what we need for ourselves and our community, because we're long overdue. So with that being said, I appreciate everyone for being on the panel and definitely coming on short notice to break down and talk about politics in this space. So and make sure you follow us on Soapboxx Podcast with 2X on Instagram. Follow us on all of your streaming services. So for Alan, for Christian, for Donna, for Senator Dwight Bullard, for Andrew Darling, for TJ Legacy, this is the Soapboxx Podcast. We appreciate you guys for listening to us on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify streaming services, Facebook. We are the Soapboxx Podcast, and we're out. Peace.